Hi, Cindy Johnson. I'm going to go over some highlights from a few of the chapters in the Coding Handbook. I'll start with Chapter 2. One thing that's talked about in Chapter 2 is the importance of indentations and how you must follow those when finding terms. So I wanted to use the example of asphyxiation here and traumatic asphyxiation and how many times that is subdivided and how many times the indentation goes down. This one line right here, this is a carryover line when it says see foreign body, respiratory tract. It has been indented twice when it's a carryover line. Otherwise, your indentations here mean something. They mean you're going to the next level for a term. And it's important to be able to follow that as it's indented. So you can either use the straight edge of the page after the page you're working on, or you can get a white piece of paper and just use that as a way to follow the indentations. So we're under asphyxiation traumatic due to low oxygen content of an ambient air due to being trapped in low oxygen environment in a car trunk, circumstances undetermined, done with intent to harm by another person or self. So see how many times that content was indented before you finally got to your final code. So being able to follow that, using some tool to be able to follow that so you don't get confused. That's one thing I wanted to show you. The other thing is you notice all these little black boxes with the white check marks. That indicates additional characters are needed. And you also see there will be terms sometimes that have a dash after them, like this hypothyroidism, M14.8 dash. That dash also means additional characters are needed. So in our exercises, that's what you're going to see when I am telling you there's additional characters needed, because I don't have a way to reproduce the little black box. Also wanted to bring to your attention an example of essential and non-essential modifiers. The term asplenia, which means without a spleen. Congenital in this example is a non-essential modifier. It does not change this code. In the medical record you might see it as just asplenia, or you might see it as congenital asplenia. And either term is going to get you to this code. But if you see post-surgical asplenia, this is now an essential modifier, therefore the code is different. This is a good example of a non-essential and an essential modifier. The next thing I want to show you is from Chapter 3, relational terms, because this is sometimes confusing. The word and. The word and should be interpreted to mean either and, or it can mean or when it appears in a code title. So I looked for an example besides the one that's in the textbook to show you what we're talking about, and I saw L97-411. So let's go there. L97-411. Non-pressure chronic ulcer of the right heel and midfoot. This is an example. And can be read as or. So if your medical record says a non-pressure chronic ulcer of the right heel, this would be the correct code because you would read this as or. In other words, you don't have to have a chronic ulcer of the right heel and the right midfoot limited to breakdown of skin to be this code. You can read that and as or. That's one thing I want to show you in this chapter. And the other thing were the Excludes 1 and Excludes 2 notes. You may have read that. And I'm going to go to M43. And I use my textbook. I write in my code book because I don't know how you keep all this straight. I can't remember all this. I need notes. And it's important for you to realize this code book is your tool. If you do decide to move forward and get a coding credential, you can use the code book when you take the CCS exam. You do not use the code book when you take the RHIT exam, but what the exam does is it reproduces these numbers as though you were looking at a code book. So you're not having to memorize things so much as know where to find them in your code book. But here's an example, this fusion of spine right here, where it has an excludes 1 and an excludes 2 note. Exclude 1 means two conditions cannot be reported together, so that the fusion of the spine cannot be reported along with an ankylosing spondylitis. Those are two different things. But this excludes 2 note here, the patient may have both conditions at the same time. So you could report the fusion of the spine and an arthrodesis status. So this is a good example of showing excludes 1 and excludes 2 notes. And until you become very familiar with what they are, I suggest making notes like this in the column so that you know what those two terms mean. They are very, very important. And just as an aside, the coding clinic, which remember from one of my first podcasts, tells you that that's like our Bible as coders of how we know how to use this code book, and so we're all using it the same way. The coding clinics have intimated that there's going to be a lot of changes with excludes 2 coming down the road. They're finding that they had used that a bit more than they should have, or not as much as they should have used that when they used excludes 1. So you may hear some more about that if you decide to stay in the coding field. Okay, that's what I wanted to say for chapters 1 and 2. I'm sorry, 2 and 3. And we'll go forward from there.